You're listening to Barsky Studio True Crime. The story you're about to hear is just one of many hidden in the shadows of Nordic history, based on true events. No emotions, no bias, just facts.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a case that really shook the British justice system to its core, and frankly still does. The 1993 murder of James Bulger.
Yes, a horrific crime. A 2-year-old boy abducted and killed by two 10-year-olds, Robert Thompson and John Venables. They became the youngest convicted murderers in, well, recent British history.
The shock at the time was just immense, but what our sources really highlight is how the legal and, I suppose, moral questions raised by this case have lingered for decades now.
Absolutely. It's not just about revisiting a terrible event. It's really about this ongoing 30-year debate concerning how the system deals with child offenders, whether rehabilitation actually works in these extreme cases, and crucially, the clash between offender anonymity and public safety.
Exactly. So we're going to trace this whole story from the crime itself through that really unprecedented trial and right up to the ongoing issues, particularly around John Venables' reoffending and his family's fight for answers.
Our aim here is to give you the key facts, but also to explore those really difficult systemic questions that this case continues to force us all to confront.
Okay, let's start with the day itself, February 12, 1993. James Bulger was with his mother, Denise Fergus, in Bootle at the new Strand Shopping Centre.
She turned away for just a moment, paying at a butcher shop, and in that instant, Thompson and Venables led him away.
And that CCTV footage.
Yeah.
It's just unforgettable, isn't it? Those two slightly older boys leading this little toddler by the hand.
It really is. And what happened next, the journey they took him on, is just deeply disturbing when you look at the details. They walked him about 2.5 miles across Liverpool.
2.5 miles. And the really staggering thing our sources point out is how many people saw them.
Yeah, it's almost unbelievable. 38 different people reported seeing them. Witnesses saw James crying, looking distressed. One even noticed an injury on his head, apparently, from being dropped.
But people just assumed
But
that he was the younger brother, that they were helping a lost child.
that seems to be it. The boys gave plausible enough excuses at the time. It speaks volumes about how inconceivable it was then that children so young could be capable of such calculated harm.
But the evidence suggests it was calculated, doesn't it? There was evidence of planning.
There was. Critically, the sources confirm Thompson and Venables had actually tried to abduct another 2-year-old earlier that same day.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Yes, they were only stopped because that child's mother noticed and intervened. So that suggests premeditation, which becomes quite significant later when we look at how their risk was assessed.
So they eventually took James to a railway line near Walton. And the details of the attack there are, well, they're brutal.
Extremely. The forensic evidence cataloged 42 separate injuries. He was beaten with bricks, with stones.
And that railway fish plate, a heavy iron bar, wasn't it?
Yes, a 22-pound iron bar. That's what caused the fatal skull fractures, 10 of them. That also shoplifted some blue model paint, Humbrol paint, and threw that in his eye.
Just gratuitous cruelty.
And importantly, the pathology confirmed James died from those injuries before his body was hit by a train. It seems they placed him on the tracks hoping the train would, disguise the cause of death as an accident.
The level of violence, the calculation from 10-year-olds, it just left the justice system reeling, didn't it?
Completely uncharted territory. The legal response was immediate, but also incredibly controversial right from the start.
They were tried as adults, wasn't that it? In Preston Crown Court.
Yes, tried in an adult court in late 1993. And the atmosphere was, volatile. Huge public anger, media frenzy, protests outside the court.
That whole environment, the adult trial setting, later became a major legal issue itself.
It absolutely did. They were initially sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, which, for listeners maybe not familiar with that UK term, essentially means an indefinite sentence, like a life sentence. But the minimum time they had to serve, the tariff, was decided separately.
And that trial itself was later found to be flawed.
Yes, significantly. In 1999, the European Court of Human Rights, the ECHR, ruled the trial process had been unfair.
Unfair how?
Yeah.
Because of the publicity.
Partly, but mainly because the ECHR found that Being so young in that intimidating adult court setting with all the legal formality, they simply couldn't understand the proceedings well enough to properly participate in their own defense.
Right, so they couldn't really follow it all.
Exactly. That ruling had a massive impact, actually. It fundamentally changed procedures for trying children accused of serious crimes in the UK.
Okay, and then there was the sentencing tariff. The judge originally recommended, what, 8 years?
That's right. Mr. Justice Moreland suggested an 8-year minimum, but then came the public reaction. A huge petition organized by the Sun newspaper got nearly 280,000 signatures demanding a much longer sentence.
And that led to political intervention.
It did. The Home Secretary at the time, Michael Howard, stepped in and increased the minimum term quite dramatically to 15 years.
Which caused a huge row, didn't it, between the politicians and the judiciary?
Oh, absolutely. A major clash. Lord Donaldson, a very senior judge, publicly slammed Howard's decision. He called it institutionalized vengeance and basically accused the politician of responding to public outcry rather than judicial principles.
So a real tension between popular demand and legal process.
Precisely. And ultimately, the courts pushed back. That 15-year tariff was challenged, and in 2000, the Lord Chief Justice, Lord Wolfe, overturned Howard's increase and set the minimum term back to the original 8 years.
So the judiciary essentially reasserted its independence on sentencing.
You could say that, yes, it reinforced the idea that sentencing tariffs should be based on legal judgment, not political pressure or media campaigns.
So after serving those 8 years, Thompson and Venables were released. That was 2001.
Correct. Released on parole, aged 18, both under completely new identities. And this wasn't just informal, it was backed by a high court injunction granting them lifelong anonymity worldwide.
Lifelong anonymity. Why was that deemed necessary?
Well, the official assessment at the time concluded there was a, quote, real and strong possibility that their lives would be at risk if their new identities were ever revealed. Serious threats.
So they were given new names, new histories, moved somewhere secret, and placed on a life license.
Exactly. A life license means they're technically still serving their sentence in the community, subject to very strict conditions, and could be recalled to prison at any time if they breached those conditions or their risk increased.
Which brings us to what happened next. Because their paths after release were starkly different.
Very different. As far as public records show, Robert Thompson seems to have stayed out of trouble. He hasn't been known to reoffend since 2001.
But John Venables, that's a very different story.
It is. For Venables, the idea of rehabilitation under the protection of anonymity, well, it fell apart quite dramatically and repeatedly.
Were there early signs? The sources suggest issues started pretty quickly.
Yes, indications of difficulties soon after release. Reports mention things like heavy drinking, drug use. He actually got a police caution for cocaine possession back in 2008.
And there were other incidents, too. And a Frey arrest.
Yes, also in 2008. Charges were dropped after he claimed self-defense, but it showed instability. And perhaps more worryingly, there are these unexamined allegations mentioned in some reports.
What kind of allegations?
Relating to his time before release in 2001, specifically an allegation of sexual misconduct involving a female staff member at the Red Bank Secure Unit where he was held.
And that was never fully investigated.
It seems not, or at least not in a way that informed his initial risk assessment for release, which, in hindsight, looks like a potentially crucial missed warning sign given what happened later.
Okay, so fast forward to 2010. He gets recalled to prison. What happened there?
The trigger was actually Venables himself contacting his probation officer. He claimed he was worried his identity had been compromised.
So he called them.
Yes, but when the probation officer arrived at his home, they found him frantically trying to destroy his computer's hard drive, physically attacking it with, I think, a knife and a tin opener?
Trying to hide something clearly?
Exactly. And the investigation soon revealed what? He was subsequently convicted of downloading and distributing indecent images of children.
How many images?
57 were found on his devices, including 8 classified at level 4, which is the second most serious category.
But it wasn't just downloading, was it? The sources mention his online activity was quite manipulative.
Extremely disturbing. He'd created this online persona posing as a 35-year-old married woman called Dawn Smith.
Right, I remember reading this.
And under this guise, he was engaging with other offenders online, pretending to abuse a fictional 8-year-old daughter to try and, elicit images and material from them.
So actively predatory behavior just completely demolishes the image of someone successfully rehabilitated.
Utterly. It showed a clear, specific, and predatory interest that seemed to have been entirely missed or underestimated by the system managing him.
He got a 2-year sentence for that. And then he was released again.
Released again in 2013 under a second new identity with another round of anonymity protection.
You can only imagine how James Bulger's family felt about that. They were promised safety through this life license system.
And yet the state was investing huge resources in protecting someone who had now proven to be an ongoing danger, specifically to children. The pattern just repeated itself.
And it didn't take long, did it?
No. By late 2017, Venables was recalled to prison yet again.
What for this time?
Same thing, essentially. He was convicted in 2018 for possessing more child abuse images. And this time, police also found what the reports described as a pedophile manual.
A manual. What does that mean?
It apparently contained detailed advice on things like grooming children online, sexual abuse techniques, and, crucially, how to evade detection by law enforcement.
So, actively seeking information on how to continue offending and avoid capture.
That's what the evidence suggested, yes. He received a sentence of 40 months for those offenses.
And he's still inside now.
Yes. He became eligible for parole again, but has been refused multiple times, including in 2020 and most recently in late 2023. The parole board has consistently said he still poses a significant risk to children.
This whole cycle of offending, release, reoffending, it leads directly to the questions James's parents, Denise Fergus and Ralph Bulger, have been asking for, well, for decades now.
They've campaigned relentlessly. They led a huge e-petition, over 213,000 signatures, demanding a full public inquiry into the whole handling of the case and Venables' management.
What are their main arguments? What specific evidence do they feel was ignored?
A key point they've raised repeatedly concerns the original trial and subsequent parole hearings. They argue that evidence from the pathologist's report suggesting a possible sexual element to the original murder-specific injuries not related just to the beating was never properly presented or considered.
Why would that be missed or downplayed?
That's their question. And they connect it directly to Venables' later crimes involving child abuse imagery, they ask. If there were hints of this sexual deviancy back in 1993, how was it missed by all the experts assessing him for years?
It's a powerful question. How could his supervisors, his psychologists, apparently miss this specific risk factor before 2010?
The official line seems to be that while they knew he was a general risk because of the murder, this specific sexual interest wasn't identified until the 2010 conviction, which, to the family, sounds like a catastrophic failure in assessment and supervision.
And the sheer number of breaches under supervision. The sources mentioned a figure, didn't they?
Yes, an astonishing figure came out. Between 2001 and 2018, a total of 70 breaches of Thompson and Venables' license conditions were apparently recorded.
70 breaches. What does that even mean in practice?
It suggests the rules were constantly being broken, rules about contact, movement, behavior, maybe substance use. 70 breaches points towards a supervision system that was perhaps struggling significantly to contain them despite the resources poured into anonymity.
James's mother, Denise Fergus, has been very critical of the probation service specifically.
Yes, she stated she wasn't kept informed about Venables' breaches in the way she'd been promised, undermining her confidence in the system meant to protect the public.
There was an official review after the 2010 recall, wasn't there? The Omand review.
There was, yes. Commissioned by the Ministry of Justice to look into Venables' management leading up to his first recall.
And what did it find?
Well, officially, Sir David Omand concluded that the supervision had generally met the required standards for managing high-risk offenders.
But, there's always a but with these reviews, it seems.
The but was that its scope, its terms of reference, were widely criticized as being too narrow. Crucially, it specifically excluded any examination of Venables' time in the Red Bank Secure Unit before his first release in 2001.
So it didn't look at those earlier allegations, the potential warning signs from before he was even let out the first time.
Exactly. It basically ignored a critical period of his history, meaning the review couldn't or didn't examine whether potential problems were missed right at the start.
And despite all this, the reoffending, the breaches, the questions about supervision, the courts have maintained Venables' anonymity.
They have. James's father, Ralph Bulger, legally challenged the anonymity injunction in 2019, trying to get it lifted. But the High Court refused.
On what grounds? Still the risk to his life.
Primarily, yes. The court relied on updated threat assessments, which, again, concluded he would be at an extremely high risk of serious violence, possibly even being killed, if his current identity or appearance were made public.
So the court decided that protecting his life, even as a convicted reoffending pedophile, still overrides the public interest arguments for transparency.
That was the legal judgment, yes. Particularly as he remains incarcerated, the immediate public safety argument for revealing his identity was deemed less compelling than the risk to his life.
So wrapping this up, we're left with this fundamental conflict, aren't we? The one that started right back in 1993.
It really is the central tension. On one hand, you have the justice system's commitment legally and ethically to rehabilitation and to protecting the lives of offenders, even notorious ones, through measures like anonymity.
But on the other hand,
You have the repeated demonstrable failure of that system, in Venables' case, to guarantee public safety. And alongside that, the profound ongoing suffering of the victim's family who feel denied transparency and ultimately justice.
it's clear this case had a massive impact on how the UK deals with young offenders.
Oh, undoubtedly. It was a catalyst pushing towards more punitive approaches, more secure facilities, and specialized assessments for children who commit grave crimes. We're still seeing the legislative echoes today.
Like the recent debates in 2024 about parole reforms.
Exactly. Proposals allowing government ministers to potentially refer parole decisions for high-risk cases to the High Court. That discussion is happening partly because of the legacy of cases like this, and echoes that original Michael Howard controversy over political influence.
So the final thought for you, listening to this.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just this one horrific case, doesn't it? It's not simply about vengeance versus rehabilitation.
No, it's about a deeper, more complex dilemma for any justice system. How do you balance the duty to protect an offender's life, especially when they reoffend, using tools like anonymity, when doing so seems to directly conflict with public safety, public confidence, and the sense of justice demanded by victims and their families?
That tension between state protection for the offender and the public's right to know and be safe, that's the incredibly difficult question this case leaves us wrestling with, even 30 years on.
Thank you for listening to Barsky Studio True Crime. The story you've heard is just one of many hidden in the shadows of Nordic history. We release new episodes every week, exploring fresh true stories, from haunting mysteries to chilling crimes. Subscribe and join us next week as we uncover another untold truth. This was Barsky Studio True Crime, told by AI with no emotion and no filter.